Okay, just picture this for a second. Maybe the most powerful politician in the world, and arguably the wealthiest person, suddenly locked in this really public, really personal fight.
Yeah, it's not exactly subtle stuff, is it?
Not at all. We're talking open threats, accusations flying back and forth. It feels, well, pretty intense and maybe a bit surprising given how things seemed before.
It really is dramatic. I mean, looking into this, you see descriptions of them as maybe a brash billionaire duo, and people had wondered if their alliance or whatever it was might eventually fracture.
And now it seems like it really has. Welcome, everyone, to the Daily Download.
Getting you plugged into the day's biggest conversations. I'm Andra.
And I'm Ian. Today we're exploring the information surrounding a really significant modern feud. The recent, very public bust-up between President Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Yeah, our goal here is to really try and understand what's driving this conflict, what the specific issues are, and what this whole situation tells us about, wealth, power, and how things play out in the public eye today.
So where do we start peeling back the layers on this one? It seems like not that long ago, the relationship was actually pretty good.
That's what the background suggests, yeah. Terms like great or even an alliance were used. They were often seen as maybe once close allies.
Okay, so they were aligned, at least publicly. What seems to have been the spark that ignited this particular firestorm? Was it just a slow drift apart?
It looks like there was a specific trigger event, actually, not just a gradual cooling off. The recent blow-up seems directly tied to a major piece of legislation being proposed.
Ah, right, the big bill. And it's interesting how differently they apparently referred to it. Musk supposedly called it the big ugly bill.
He did, while President Trump, on the other hand, reportedly called it his big beautiful bill.
Ah, okay. That difference alone kind of signals the level of disagreement, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So let's get into Musk's side first. What was his problem with this big ugly bill? What were his main criticisms?
Well, he really didn't hold back. He apparently called it a disgusting abomination.
Wow. Strong words.
Very. He also claimed it was passed in the dead of night and basically argued it didn't serve the interests of regular Americans. A big part of his argument was about government spending. He felt it didn't cut nearly enough.
Okay, so fiscal concerns, anything else?
Yes, and this seems really key. He was apparently very unhappy that the bill canceled out some savings he felt he'd made through his own cuts, and crucially, it reduced or even stripped away funding tied to the electric vehicle mandate.
Ah, the EV money, which he'd see as directly impacting Tesla sales, right?
Exactly. He viewed that as a major incentive for people buying Teslas, so a direct hit to one of his core businesses.
Okay, so Musk frames it as fiscal responsibility and protecting EV incentives. How did President Trump reportedly see Musk's objections? Did he buy that reasoning?
Well, reports suggest President Trump saw it a bit differently. He apparently told people he thought Musk was mainly just upset because that EV mandate money was being cut.
Ah, so implying it was more about Musk's bottom line than, say, the national debt.
That seems to be the implication from the president's side, yeah, that it was more self-interested.
Okay, so you have this fundamental disagreement over a major bill, different interpretations of motives, and then things really heat up, moving beyond just policy debate.
Oh, yeah. It escalated fast into some pretty serious public threats.
What did that look like? What was said?
Well, President Trump reportedly went onto his platform, Truth Social, and didn't mince words. He accused Musk of ingratitude.
Ingratitude.
And then he proposed a pretty direct consequence, saying something like, the easiest way to save money is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. And he specifically mentioned SpaceX contracts.
Whoa. Okay. Targeting government contracts, especially for SpaceX. That's huge. That's like existential for parts of Musk's business empire. How did Musk react to that?
He hit back immediately, using his own platform, X. He referenced Trump's statement and fired off this threat. At SpaceX, we'll begin decommissioning its Dragon spacecraft immediately.
Decommissioning Dragon. Seriously, that's the capsule that takes astronauts to the space station.
Exactly. Now, later reports indicated SpaceX wasn't actually going to do that, but the message was definitely sent, like a counterpunch.
A very public counterpunch. Did he say anything else?
He did. He added this layer about his own political importance, claiming, without me, Trump would have lost the election, Dems would control the House, and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Such ingratitude.
Wow. Okay, that's quite the statement, taking credit for election outcomes. So we go from a policy fight to threatening contracts to these huge personal political claims.
Yeah.
And it didn't stop there, did it? It got even more personal.
It absolutely did. It moved beyond just business and policy smack talk. Musk apparently made a really serious allegation against President Trump concerning the Epstein files.
Right, some mention of that. And he also agreed with someone calling for Trump's impeachment.
That's what was reported, yes, aligning himself with calls for impeachment.
And did the personal attacks go both ways? Did Trump reportedly hit back on a personal level?
Yes. There were reports suggesting President Trump told associates he thought Musk's, quote, crazy behavior was linked to alleged drug use.
Okay, so now we're into allegations of drug use and connections to the Epstein situation.
Mm.
That's quite a shift from debating a spending bill.
It really is a much darker, more personal turn.
Bringing up the Epstein files specifically is interesting too, given how much public focus there is on that. What context do we have around those files in relation to this feud?
Well, the materials we looked at do note the existence of these files, and they mention some related legal things, like references to a specific lawsuit, Jane Doe v. Epstein and Trump.
Okay, so the sources acknowledge these things exist and were brought into the feud.
Exactly. It's reporting that these references were made in the context of the conflict, not making independent claims about the files themselves.
Got it. And this whole business of throwing around serious allegations in public, it actually connects to some fascinating research findings that were mentioned about how information, especially negative stuff, can kind of stick.
Right, the continued influence effect. It's this idea that even if an accusation is later corrected or, proven false, it can still linger in people's minds and affect their judgment.
Like trying to get glitter off your hands. Some of it just stays there.
That's a great analogy, actually, yeah. The research suggests that even when misconduct allegations against, say, political candidates were refuted, they still had a negative impact on how people evaluated them.
So the mud sticks, even if you try to wash it off later.
Pretty much. It seems quite powerful, especially when it's not strictly a partisan issue where people might just dismiss things based on who said it.
Did the research mention anything about who might be more prone to this effect? Or less?
It did mention a couple of interesting things, like people who tend to trust their gut feelings or intuition more, they seemed more susceptible to this effect. Their intuition might latch on to the initial claim.
Huh.
But interestingly, things like being more digitally literate, better at navigating online info, and also being older were associated with less of an effect. Maybe more skepticism or different ways of processing information comes with age or digital savvy.
That makes a lot of sense, especially in a feud playing out so publicly on social media where things spread like wildfire.
Absolutely. Claims fly fast, corrections, maybe not so much.
And this all brings us back to the core dynamic between these two figures. You've got immense power on both sides, political and financial. But despite the open hostility, there's also this underlying reliance. They kind of need each other.
That's one of the really striking points that comes through. One analysis put it very bluntly. Trump is the most politically powerful man in the world. Musk is the wealthiest man in the world, and their fates have become inextricably linked.
Inextricably linked. How so? What does that dependence look like day to day?
Well, think about Musk's businesses. SpaceX relies heavily on government contracts, specifically NASA and defense contracts. Tesla potentially benefits from various government policies or incentives, even if that specific EV mandate money was cut in this bill. He needs the government.
Okay, so Musk needs government buy-in, and the other way around.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The U.S. government, particularly NASA, has become incredibly reliant on SpaceX. For getting astronauts to the International Space Station, launching crucial satellites, SpaceX has really reduced the U.S.'s dependence on Russia for space access, which is huge geopolitically.
So they're stuck with each other, in a way, even while they're publicly feuding. And that gives both of them leverage, doesn't it?
Absolutely. President Trump has the power of the presidency, control over those contracts, regulations, and obviously his huge public platform to shape narratives and potentially hurt Musk's companies financially.
Right. You mentioned reports of investors getting nervous about Tesla stock because of this feud.
Exactly. People were reportedly dumping Tesla shares just on the possibility Trump might target the company. And the stock did apparently dip when the feud was really hot. That's real financial impact from political rhetoric.
And Musk's leverage. It's not just running his companies, is it?
No, it's multifaceted. His immense personal wealth, he was a top GOP donor last year, remember? His ownership of X, which is a massive global communication platform where he can directly shape discourse. And observers point out he has the potential resources to really shake things up politically, like funding primary challenges against Republicans he doesn't like.
And this isn't just theoretical political impact, right? This specific feud already caused ripples in Congress.
Yeah, it did. Musk's loud criticism of that bill reportedly complicated things for the Republican leadership. It apparently threatened a fragile agreement Speaker Mike Johnson had put together in the House. And it also made Majority Leader John Thune's job harder in the Senate, trying to negotiate the related reconciliation package. So one billionaire's tweets can actually scramble carefully laid legislative plans.
Which leads some commentators to think this could get even messier within the Republican Party itself.
Potentially, yeah. The idea is that if both Trump and Musk are willing to use their resources to back different candidates in primaries, you could see some really intense, expensive fights over the direction, the very heart of the GOP, as some put it.
Wow. Okay. So it starts with a bill, blows up into threats and personal insults, reveals this deep, almost codependent relationship, and has real consequences for markets, for laws being made, and for the political landscape.
It really lays bare that complex, sometimes tense relationship between massive private wealth and influence and governmental power, especially when the personalities involved are so prominent and willing to engage publicly.
So if we had to boil it down, what are the key things to take away from exploring this Trump-Musk situation?
I'd say, first, the trigger, a specific policy disagreement over a major bill that shattered a previous alliance. Second, the rapid escalation into very real public threats targeting core interests, contracts, company operations. Third, the shift to highly personal, damaging allegations. And fourth, underpinning it all, this fundamental mutual reliance. Musk needs the government. The government needs Musk's tech, particularly SpaceX. And finally, the significant real-world impact their feud has on markets, on Congress, and potentially on the future of their political party.
It's definitely a clash playing out on a massive stage.
A modern saga, really,
Right.
with potentially huge ripple effects.
Well, unpacking all of that certainly gives us a lot to think about. We hope this look into the Trump-Musk situation has been interesting for you listening.
Absolutely. And if you found this discussion useful, please do like, subscribe, maybe leave a comment. It genuinely helps us get these conversations out to more people.
Now, maybe just one final thought to chew on, based on everything we've talked about. Think about how these very public battles between incredibly powerful people, amplified instantly by social media, might be changing things. Not just who wins an election or whose stock goes up, but how you process information. How do you evaluate leaders when accusations, even disputed ones, fly so fast and can leave that residue, that glitter we talked about?
It's definitely something worth considering in the world we live in now.
It is. Thanks so much for joining us on the Daily Download.